Welcome to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. There are no traffic jams along the extra mile when you're studying for your bar exam. And now your hosts, Jackson Mummy and Megan Saya from Celebration Bar Review.
Hey everybody, welcome. So glad to have all of you back with us. We're back after a couple weeks away and hope everybody had a good Easter Passover holiday season. I hope all of you are feeling well and getting your vaccination shots. Yes, our public service announcement. We are now in the beginning of the exam result phase from the February 2021 exam. And I thought it might be helpful today to just lay out the expected release dates in a few states in which we know we had students taking the February 2021 exam. This is not a complete list of every jurisdiction, but I thought it might be helpful to just give you a broad sense of what we're looking at as exam results release dates come out over the next couple of months. So I'm just going to go down this list with you and give you a sense of when we expect results. The first state that is on my list is Alabama. That's a UBE state. And we would expect those results really almost any time now. Mid-April is usually when they come out. It could be any time from today till, I would say, maybe April 19th or 20th. So we're looking for those results in Alabama. Next state is Florida. Obviously, we've got a lot of Florida takers. Those results will come out on April 12th. They will come out typically in the morning, so be prepared for that. Georgia results, we don't have a specific, or I don't have a specific date. Typically, it is in mid-May. They've been running later. And I think I have to caveat all of these February 2021 exam date that we're going to talk about. Because of the weird nature of the exams in 2020 and 2021, I'm not sure that the traditional release dates will necessarily hold. But if the traditional release dates hold, we would expect Georgia to release mid to late May of this year. Next jurisdiction I want to highlight is Illinois. That's another UBE jurisdiction, and their results could come out any day now as well. Typically, April 7th, April 8th, April 9th would not be surprising dates, so I'm looking for those results imminently. The same would be true in Iowa, early April. It's a UBE jurisdiction, and we would expect those results to be coming soon. Next jurisdiction to look at is Maryland, another UBE jurisdiction. And historically, their results come out between April 10th and 15th. So that's what we're looking at again this year. We'll be keeping an eye out for those. And then Massachusetts should be late April. I would say from the 25th to the 30th of April is what we would typically look for from Massachusetts. Then we get to a couple of big UBE states, New Jersey. In New Jersey, we don't know. I mean, the honest answer is we don't know. Some years they have come out in April, mid-April. And other years they've come out in mid to late May. So we're somewhere in that range now. I know that's not any help to those of you that took the New Jersey exam, but they don't announce a date, they'll just release. And typically they try to release around the New York release date. And so that leads us to New York, and we don't know when New York will release. I usually get a spidey sense, that's what Megan calls it, my spidey sense, for when New York will come out. I would expect New York results before the end of April. That's my anticipation. Remember, they had far fewer bar takers in February than they normally have, so I'm expecting an earlier rather than a later release in New York for the UBE there. Another jurisdiction that I expect any day now, if they haven't already been released, would be North Carolina. Typically, April 7th through the 10th would be the range, so we're right in that period of time right now. And so often happens, we get into these Q&A webinars and podcasts, and we say they're coming on a certain date, and then we find out in the afternoon when we're recording that, in fact, that's when they did come out. If you're listening to this later and results came out in some of these states, there you go. A couple more states to tell you about. Tennessee, we would expect those results mid-April, probably from the 10th through about the 15th of April, and that's the normal expectation of time there. Texas, I don't know. It's the UBE. It's completely different. Who knows what they're going to do? In years past, Texas has released their results at the end of April. I think end of April, beginning of May is still pretty accurate, but honestly, we just don't know at this moment. But again, first time into the UBE, so we'll see what happens with that. And then the last state that I wanted to highlight for you is Washington State. That's another UBE jurisdiction. We would expect those results also between about the 12th and the 15th of April, so mid-April there. So I think by the middle to end of April, we're going to have a number of states providing results. We've had a few very small jurisdictions already release results, but there's not much to say when you've got 15 people that passed in Arkansas or something. It's hardly worthwhile. So that's where we stand at this moment. So with that, let me bring Megan in. Hi, there you go. That was just fascinating, wasn't it? I know you were.
Yes, no, important information.
It's so weird, isn't it? Because we're getting these jurisdictions that only have a handful of bar takers. I saw the release in one state, I think it was Arkansas, and it's a it's 2 pages not of names. It's just a 2-page letter, and it's got about 15 names on it of people that pass. It's like, how many people took this exam?
Yeah, definitely seeing some lower numbers in many jurisdictions. So
yeah,
I anticipate that'll be the case.
Yeah, it's weird, but there we go. So historically, when we look at these early numbers, correct me if I'm wrong, we don't get enough of a number set to make any predictions broadly until we get to about Florida in mid-April. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think we definitely need to see and hear from the jurisdictions that have thousands of applicants as opposed to, the 30 applicants.
Yeah, so I know that you'll see some things published and written that says such and such a state had this pass rate. I wouldn't overreact to that information because it's just such a small sample size.
So let's talk about some of the general things that are going on, and let's look forward at the next one. So as we recorded, remind me, was it 2 weeks ago was our last webinar?
Yeah.
We've talked about how we hadn't heard affirmatively anything from Georgia yet. So literally while we were recording was when they sent out the announcement. Hopefully all the Georgia students already know this, and you should have gotten an email from the Georgia bar. But if not, Georgia is going remote for the July 2021 exam, and the Georgia portion of the test will still be open book. If you were curious about that, and I know we've talked about that already, ask if you want some more clarification again, if you're a Georgia student and you want some advice or help with what that looks like and how we're advising people to do that. But definitely know that's the case for Georgia. Also, Indiana has announced that they're going remote. That's the only other state in the last 2 weeks that has announced. So definitely we're seeing it slow down, which I know, Jackson, you had said you anticipated that we'd maybe hit this plateau a bit of just waiting. And so now, hopefully, whether or not your jurisdiction will be remote or in person for the July exam, and you can study accordingly.
Yeah, and I think we should highlight a couple of states. California and New York will be online. Florida and Texas right now look like they will be in person. I suppose that's all subject to change depending on health and spikes in coronavirus, hopefully not. But that's what we've got right now. And I think we discovered in 2020 and 2021, examiners were willing to back off of an in-person exam relatively late in the game. That happened in Texas, right, in February. And so you should make your plans if you're in an in-person jurisdiction like Texas or Florida to travel to the site, but you should be flexible mentally for the possibility that it could turn into an online exam still.
Yeah, definitely. And then also Oregon released a statement that they will be in person. Funny, they're the only jurisdiction who released a statement about it. Texas, Florida, just the other states that are in person have just said nothing but put their locations just the way they would in a normal year. But Oregon actually gave an affirmative statement saying that they'll be doing the exam in person. All right. Oh, there we go. And Annette in the chat box just said Maine will make a decision about in-person or remote by May 1st. So yes, I'm sure there are some jurisdictions that we will hear. We'll continue to update people on the webinar. We're checking it, but definitely, again, I know we say it every week, make sure that any emails from your state bar are not going to your spam folder. Make sure that you're receiving those emails because it's really important. They need to be able to communicate with you. So you want to get that.
Yeah, you need to get emails from your bar examiners. You need to get emails from the software company, Examplify or whatever, because those are pretty important. And you need to get emails from us. I think those are the three.
Yeah. Definitely. All right. So now we're going to turn and talk about California for a few minutes. The California Bar had a Board of Trustees meeting last week that I sat in on virtually. And I think these are really helpful. They're open to the public. So if you're ever interested, if you are someone who is a member of the California Bar or looking to be a member of the California Bar, they post the agenda online beforehand so you can see if they're talking about anything that you're interested in. But California is pretty transparent about their makeup of the bar in California specifically, but know if you're in another jurisdiction, there might be some takeaways for you as well. So interestingly, they have seen, so I know Jackson, you and I have talked a lot about this idea of this wave, right? Where people pushed off, we saw a ton of people defer from the February exam. And obviously there were a lot of people who decided not to take the exam in 2020. So we're wondering when's this wave going to hit of people? So Interestingly, there has been in California, there was a 93% increase for their January and February applications to take the July exam. So that means now, again, we don't know what the final numbers are going to look like, but where normally there would be people more spread out, they had a 93% increase in the number of applications that they had to process for the July exam in January and in February. So that's a lot. Yeah.
And just to put it in perspective, a normal July California exam's got about 12,000 applicants. So I don't know what that, I mean, does that mean 15, 20,000 people?
Right.
I don't know. It's, that borders on crazy.
So we'll see. I don't know if they're still seeing that significant of a jump in applications, but yeah, that's pretty significant of increase in applicants. All right. So for the February 2021 exam, they had 3,811 applicants and 3,529 actual attendees. So definitely lower numbers than they would usually have for a February bar, and a pretty good number of people who even were registered, had not deferred, and then just either didn't show up on day one or took day one and didn't show up for day two. Just interesting to see these numbers. The February exam was smaller, certainly than.
Way smaller, right? Again, February in California is 5,000 to 8,000 most years. That's a significant drop off. And when you consider that they lowered the passing score, I think this is a result of the very late testing in 2020 and just not enough time for people to recover and get registered. Now, all those people then, I'm assuming, registered in January and February for July. Right. So maybe we've got just an earlier registration, not a bigger registration, or it will be bigger, but it won't stay at that same 93%. But this is going to be very interesting to see. It starts to make you understand what New York was doing with capping their July registrations, because they may have looked at those numbers and gone, holy cow, we can't take that.
And certainly in New York, where they just pushed off thousands of people who would normally be applicable or normally be able to apply. So next, in terms of the test and the online testing itself, 70% of those surveyed were satisfied or extremely satisfied with the online testing experience. 31% of them tested outside of California. So that means that they didn't have to travel to the state to take the exam like they would have normally. 87% of the people who responded to the survey had no issues with technology. And 73%, if they had to take it again, would prefer at-home or hotel testing to in-person. So very interesting to see that on the whole, the California Board of Trustees and the BARD examiners, their takeaway is that for the most part, the applicants themselves would like to stay online and have that as the way that the test is given.
Yeah, and does that square with your feedback from our students?
Yes, definitely. I would say on the whole, there are certainly people have had technical issues, but there hasn't been any system-wide failure really. And so I think on the whole, people are really feeling like this is just much less stressful than having to travel, especially for people who don't live in the state that they're taking it in. So you don't have to travel there, and certainly in a state like California, it's a big state, a state like Florida, big state. In Florida, only one testing center. So even if you live in state, you have to travel. California, you have to travel generally to the location, and most people end up staying at the hotel. So certainly the cost and the anxiety and just being in different conditions, it's been really nice for applicants, I think, to not have to deal with that piece.
Yeah, I think so. That's the feedback that I've been getting as well. And California is certainly a state that has a lot of out-of-state applicants. So people who are benefited both financially and logistically by being able to take it at home. But I got very little negative feedback to the at-home testing experience anywhere in the country. So I think this is a fairly accurate number.
Yeah. So what's interesting is that I know we got some questions last time, and we have for a while now from people saying, is it going to stay online? Is that what's going to happen? Or are we just going to never go back? And so this was very interesting to hear the Board of Trustees and the California Bar Examiners talking openly about what happens with this, what should we do? And it was very interesting because one of the members actually suggested, well, maybe hearing all these numbers said, maybe we should just vote right now. Are we just going to stay online? Let's just stay online. And there was a look of panic.
There's one entity you got to discuss. You got to talk to the NCBE about this first, right?
And they said, well, I think this is something that we're definitely going to have lots of conversations about. But what is interesting that we've talked, Jackson, about, I know I've said, I feel like logistically, gosh, it must be so much easier for the bar examiners. One thing that they said that was really the benefit for them not giving it in person was that they don't have to do for the sites. And they were saying that would really be helpful for them, as if they didn't have to do this coordination anymore of hiring just these temporary workers who then maybe oversleep or come in on the first day and then don't really feel like going back the second day. Yeah, really interesting. I thought that was a really interesting window into what they're thinking. But all that to say, do we know if this is always going to be online? No, we don't know yet. They don't know yet. But it's certainly those discussions are happening. And I'm seeing coming out of California, great data that shows that the examinees would like to continue to keep it online. And so that's certainly a big piece of what they're taking into consideration.
Yeah. And of course, as I said, the NCBE has to agree to give the test online because the multi-state in California comes from the NCBE. And obviously we've got the UBE jurisdictions that are all delivered by the NCBE. So they'll have to make a decision about February of 2022 shortly. But I think this kind of information amps up the pressure on them to keep that option open. And I think when California says we want it, that obviously being the largest jurisdiction in the country is a pretty good bellwether that it might happen.
Yeah, definitely. So anyway, yeah, that's what's going on in California. Again, I think it's instructive, some of that for maybe what's going on in the rest of the country as well. We have a question. Did you hear any information regarding the people who did have issues, I think tech issues, wondering if there were formatting issues with, for example, the PT portion? No formatting issues because you don't have to format anything. You're just typing in like a plain text box, basically. Yes, definitely people had some issues. That is 100% true. I'm going to say it again. We'll say it when we get closer to the July exam. What I heard consistently the day of, I was like on everything the day of and trying to see what was going on. And if you have issues and you need tech support, you should certainly call ExamSoft, but they were very responsive on Twitter. So I would literally like make a Twitter account that you never have to use. That's just like in case you need it on exam day, because for some reason people were having really long hold times on the phone. But if you like just direct message them on Twitter or something on Twitter, they were responding immediately. That's just something to throw out there. Hopefully we keep saying we hope they fix this like tech support problem every exam. But anyway, hopefully they fix the tech support problem and they have enough people to help on the phones. But I would definitely suggest trying Twitter as well, because they even ExamSoft was even saying on Twitter, if you DM us, like we can help you immediately. So I don't know.
It's the drive-through at Chick-fil-A versus curbside parking. The one thing I would say is I did hear from some students who had equipment problems, and inevitably it was people that just made bad choices about using old laptops with bad power supplies and bad connectivity and old routers and poor Wi-Fi. You got to be smart about this stuff and don't cheap out. Go buy a computer, a laptop that works. Don't use your 7-year-old Lenovo that's plugged into your version of AOL. It just isn't going to work. And I think that was part of the problem for some people. And then there were some people that just didn't pay attention to the directions. I'd like to tell you that it's, something else, but some people, it was operator error. They didn't follow the directions and they just got themselves in trouble. So what Megan said about watching those emails is really true. Make sure you do that, take the practice tests, make sure your software is updated and go from there. So anyway, we'll talk lots more about it between now and then, but I think that gives you a sense of it.
Yeah. And that student said, my friend had timing issues going back and forth between the files, library, et cetera, and not having a scratch paper option. So again, we'll talk more about that as we go along and we get a little closer, but we've got a video about how to take the performance test online. You should watch it. You need to be practicing that like today. You need to be practicing it yesterday. If you're taking an online test, you need to be practicing and writing it online. It is awkward. Unfortunately, that's not a tech issue. It's a weird way to do it without having the booklet in front of you, but there's not really any other option if you're in an online jurisdiction. So you need to get really as comfortable as you can with it now. All right, great. The MPT lecture says that the MPT portion of the exam is done by pen and paper. I imagine that's been changed. So if I missed that update, can you please let me know?
Let's break it down this way. First of all, if you're taking the bar exam in an online format, the MPT is online. Within that grouping, there are two possibilities. You may be given the option of having a scratch pad and a pen, or you may not be given that option and you'll be given an electronic notepad, part of your screen. We have instructions for both ways of doing it. The traditional way of taking the bar exam was in person. If you're taking the bar exam in person, they're going to give you a physical multi-state performance test booklet, and you can write in the margins, but you will type your answer. We would not recommend anyone to handwrite a bar exam at all. I've had that conversation with some people recently. Please don't do it. Very few people handwrite anymore. The people who handwrite, I think, are stigmatized by the reader, and they're almost always stigmatized as being poor, as being old, and being technologically phobic. None of those things are good for you as a bar taker to be put into that category. And none of it may be true. You might be young and healthy and rich and love tech, but for some reason you decide to handwrite because somebody told you make pretty flowers over your eyes. But don't do it. It is a mistake and it will hurt you on the bar exam. So just to be clear, the performance test directions will come from the bar examiners first, and then you decide and find out whether or not you're in an in-person or an online testing center. And then you will go from there. If you're online, you'll have two different options to look at depending on your jurisdiction.
Yeah, I think I'm wondering if this person got confused thinking that with the performance test, if you're in person, they give you the packet with the performance test and it'll have the file in the library and the charging document. And then you'll have obviously your pencil and you'll be able to take notes in the margins and underline and things like that. So the difference is you're going to follow those normal instructions if you're in an in-person test. If you're in an online jurisdiction, we have a separate video for taking the performance test online. That's what you want to follow. So this person was asking for update, like it's really that. It's the follow the regular performance test instructions if you're doing it in person. And if you are doing it online, then you're going to watch this newer video that came out just like as COVID was happening and we realized that people are going to have to take it online and you'll have different instructions. All right. A student just asked, in Texas, we're in person. You're still suggesting we bring a laptop? Yes. And what's important too is when you registered, you should have registered as taking it on a laptop. When you register, I believe that's when you tell them I'm handwriting or not. So if you didn't say I'm handwriting it, then if you show up and you don't have a laptop, you won't be able to take the exam. So you need to double check, and this is why we're going to keep saying this, double check the requirements in your jurisdiction. Every jurisdiction, whether you are in person or online, has requirements for technology. So you need to make sure that your equipment matches those requirements. That is not, it's not negotiable. Like you have to have the things that they're asking you to have. Yes, definitely. If I do worry about that a bit, that it's confusing people. The online versus in-person is almost making it sound like online means it's on your laptop and in-person means you get a piece of paper. The performance test, you'll get a piece of paper in person. But for the essays and any performance test, if that's applicable to you, they will give you a booklet that has the questions, or for the performance test file and library, but you will type your answer. Just 10 years ago when I took the bar, I got a booklet and I typed my answer. That's not changed at all. So yeah, I'm glad you asked that question. Yeah. Makes sense.
No handwriting. Don't handwrite. Okay. Fill in your bubble sheet if you're in person and scan from it. Other than that. Okay. All right.
In the online PT lecture, you use text edit. Do you recommend I use text edit for both my practice PTs and my practice essays?
Yeah, absolutely. The one exception to that is if you're a foreign trained attorney and you're having difficulty with spelling and grammar, you might want to write your answer in Microsoft Word and then run a spell check when you're done. Not for work you're sending me. I don't want you to send corrected work to me or Megan, but you should correct that work afterwards using Grammarly or the spell checker in Microsoft Word just to help you get an improvement in your grammar. But outside of that, I would use the text editor because I think it's the most similar to what you get in the exam software. Pretty basic.
Yep. Am I allowed to review material in order to answer questions or write essays when following the study guide? Or should I answer by memory, intuition as best I can, then let the answer guide or the model answer support my recall? It's very tempting to do the first, and giving the time provided, I feel as if I could do that.
I'm not quite sure how to answer that. If you're following the study guide and you're a photo reader, you photo read the subject before you write the essay. But you should always write an essay with the book closed based on your knowledge. When you're done writing the essay, then you should open up your book and you should create your mind map in which you look at the model answer and the discussion if it's in a lecture or the outline itself. I think mind mapping is really important post-writing. If you're a Georgia bar taker and you're going to be able to take the exam in an open book format, our suggestion to you is to create mind maps from the beginning, because that's what you're going to bring into the exam with you, not the hard copy print books. And with that one exception, you could write, if you're a Georgia bar taker, you could write your essays using your mind maps. But I think in general, you're going to learn more with the book closed and using your intuition and knowledge.
Yeah. And I will say too, I think some people, it feels like a safety net for sure to open the question, read the question, and then go and look up like the law that you're going to need. I would say that it's really ultimately not as helpful, because you need to have a good assessment of where you actually are. And sometimes you surprise yourself and you think, gosh, I could never answer this without checking first. And then when you push yourself and you just do it, you surprise yourself with, wow, I had that in there. I had it in me, which I think is way more helpful. So I think it's that right now you don't need a safety net, because part of the studying process at this point is, yeah, you're going to fall down. You're going to write essays and you're going to be like, wow, completely forgot about that whole concept. That's okay. Guess what? As you're studying it, and that you're not going to forget about it next time because of that experience. So don't be afraid to fall flat on your face when you're writing essays at this point. Like, you have time before July. So use that experience, that the not writing perfect essays now is exactly what's going to help you write great essays by the time you get to July. All right. Then our last question, is there a different way the Georgia essay preparation is taught because of it being open book?
I alluded to it. It's the mind mapping. And so I think there you want to start mind mapping. If you're a photo reader, you absolutely want to do it. And if you've already got the photo reading course, you've got access to that webinar on mind mapping. If you're not a photo reader, you can purchase the webinar on mind mapping that I think is really helpful to do that. The reason that we think mind maps are better than the full-on notes or the full-on books is that you just don't have enough time. And when we talk to students coming out of the exams in 2020 and in February 2021, there just wasn't enough time, even with a 45-minute essay, to flip through a book and find something. The mind maps are much more succinct, and their subject, they're a lot easier. And so we think that's the significant change. But the writing style is still the same.
Yeah. Great.
So since we've got just a minute, let me just talk about, for those of you who are watching or going to watch and you're getting your results, I want to just emphasize that the world in February 2021 was clearly different. Very few bar takers nationally. We don't know what that's going to mean in terms of pass rates. We're hopeful that it will be a good sign. If you are not successful, do not beat yourself up. Don't. This is the fact that you sat for that exam makes you a really unique human being, because a lot of people didn't. And we're very proud of you for going in and doing it and taking the test. On the other hand, you need to grieve that really quickly, because we are now 100 or so days to the next bar exam. And if that gets your attention and scares you a little bit, it's by design. It's a little more than 100 days. But when I say 100 days, it's like, whoa. You will not have time in a lot of these jurisdictions to sit there and mope about it. If you want to take the July 2021 exam, you're going to have to get on it fast. That's why we're doing the text messaging. That's why we're trying to make sure that this lifetime pass guarantee is there. We have kept your courses enabled. If you wanted to get a running head start, if you really don't feel good about your results out of February, you can get in and do some studies right now. We want you to be ready, and we want you to turn the corner as quickly as you can and get into this. And we know it's hard. We know it's hard emotionally. We know it's hard physically. We know there's so much going on that makes this challenging. So we're trying to do everything we can to help you get through it. But I just wanted to emphasize that. You want to add anything?
No, I think keep at it. Keep at those studies, everybody. People are doing a great job.
Thank you so much, Megan, for being here. And we will be back on a regular weekly basis now leading up to the exam. Check it out and be sure to send us your questions. And good luck to all of you who are waiting for test results over the next few days. We hope that they are all amazing and wonderful. And we look forward to telling your stories to the whole world.
Thanks for listening and watching the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers at celebrationbarreview.com.